Okay, I think I'll get started. Okay. Okay. So this is a story I found on one of the Reddits. This person messaged me to give this a read. So the title of this story is called Tasha Was With Me. She was. No matter what anyone says, Tasha was with me at the time that she died. I know this sounds crazy, like she was killed before my eyes, but that's not the case. My name is Alexa. I'm 15 and Tasha was my best friend. We went on a school trip to Cambridge a few days ago, and on the first day we went to a touristy location, but on day 2 the teacher gave us free rein on where to go. Hey Farhana, yes, I'm back. You just watched Terrifier 3? Do you like the clown? So, most kids went to the nearby shops. We wandered around for about 3 hours before we got bored. Eventually, we found a playground containing the big trees with very big branches. Perfect for climbing. Today I'm just reading horror stories. Yeah. Tasha was an excellent tree climber. After making sure the branches were, up to a standard, we climbed a tree close to the entrance of the park. Tasha maneuvered the tree like she had been born climbing. Most of the leaves were still green, despite the cold weather. Tasha's gloves were in front of my eyes, clutching the brace in front of my face. While I was trying not to fall off, I didn't notice her dash down, making the leaves dance after I stumbled to the ground. As much grace as a baby elephant, we sat down near a bench. Tasha had a faraway look, like she was looking behind me. No, I definitely remember you. I just don't remember how to pronounce your name. I think you came in during my Final Fantasy stream. Yeah. Let me finish this bit. We sat down in a nearby bench. Tasha had a faraway look in her eyes, like she was looking behind me. The clouded lighting made her face look very pale. Her freckles looked like small smears of dirt. Her long hair had leaves in it, and her bobble hat was at an angle, as if she hadn't bothered readjusting it. Quite frankly, she looked ghostly. We made it back to the hotel at 6 p.m, but Tasha seemed distant. She was less talkative than normal. After that, we went into our room to freshen up. The stray leaves remaining in her hair. Oh my god, thank you so much for the gifts. Thank you. Oh, I'm already getting the chills, guys. Okay. The teachers weren't clear-minded either. They were in panic, trying to keep their best to keep some of the other students not problematic. We went to the bed after a very uneventful day. She slept on the bottom bunk, falling asleep moments after hitting the mattress. When I woke up, Tasha's bed was neat. Thank you. Tasha's bed was neat and unslept in. When I went to brush my teeth, her toothbrush wasn't there. Her suitcase had vanished. Her coat was gone. And the only evidence that showed she was there at all was that there was a single leaf on her pillow. There was only a few teachers in the breakfast hall. "Oh, Alexa, Tasha's missing." "Wait, what do you mean? She was with me last night." "No, nobody has seen her since 11 a.m. yesterday." 12 hours later, Tasha's body was found below the trees. The police said she fell, dying due to blood loss. But I know she was alive after that. Tasha was with me. Okay, so that's the first story. So it seems that Tasha already died before they even went back to the hotel. And that's a bit dark. Yeah, Tasha didn't snap her neck. I don't know. That would have been really messed up. Okay, this is a short one. I'm moving on to the second story. Okay. I woke up early in the middle of the night. The clock shows 3:13 a.m. Although the air feels cold, that was not the reason I woke up. The phone ringing was what I woke up to. It seemed that my mom had been trying to call me so many times while I was asleep. But why this time at night? It's 3 a.m. I hope everything is okay. Worried, I immediately go to her bedroom, only to find her nowhere to be found. Not long after that, I heard a cluttering noise from downstairs. "Mom?" It's so dark in the kitchen. We haven't changed a light bulb since dinner. It is very odd. Why would she stand up in the kitchen this late night? And tomorrow is the weekend, so there is no need for her to wake up so early. But I have something else to worry about. I need to ask her why she called me just now. Hello. As I try to approach her, I ask, "Is everything okay, Mom? What were the calls about?" After a silence, she answers, Thank you. After a silence, she answers, "It's nothing, sweetheart. You can go back to sleep now." I stopped. I think there are times where she needs a moment for herself. I'm going to let her be. But then, in the middle of the dark, as I turn my body away from her, my phone lights up. I look at my phone, and it's there. A new message from Mom. "I'm with the police. Whatever happens, do not go downstairs." I stand there, completely terrified. I can't think of anything besides the woman standing behind me. I knew something off from the very start. No one would stand there in the kitchen at 3 a.m. But I am curious who this person is. I want to know the face. but I'm so scared. I put my phone up and turned the flashlight on. But then I see nothing. There is only a bloody and pale hand grabbing my phone. Okay, that is the second story. So it seems that he shouldn't have went downstairs at 3 a.m. Oof. Okay. Yeah, that's messed up, right? I think that's really messed up. Okay. Let's get to the third story. One moment. So what do you guys think about the second story? I think it was quite messed up. I'm actually getting the chills a little bit. Okay. I'm going to read the third story now. This is a creepypasta. This is written by Sean Padolin, called The Lake in the Woods. I used to like to go exploring in the woods. Not anymore. My name is Jake. My mom and dad both had advanced degrees in agriculture. They would survey the land, crops, and sometimes even the local wildlife. I wasn't sure what they did, but I knew it was why we moved around a lot. I didn't mind though. I liked exploring and sometimes pretending I was Indiana Jones, searching for some lost and ancient civilization. Sure, I've had my fair share of close calls, but nothing ever happened to me, at least. At least not until we moved to a small town in Missouri. I don't remember the name of it due to the mental trauma I experienced, but I do remember my psychiatrist, and I do remember Zach Mayers. Zach was 9 years old that summer, the same age as me. He was into a lot of the same things I was, especially exploring. I met him when my parents moved into this farmhouse. It wasn't big. It wasn't too fancy, like the usual houses we rented, but it had a charm to it. Zach's parents owned the land and the house next to us, and the property next door where they lived. They were friendly enough, even offering to help my parents to get settled in. As they were handing the house keys to my parents, Zach came around the corner, held out his hand, and announced who he was. I was never one to make friends, but with the constant moving around whatnot, I decided, sure, okay. We had plenty to start our summer break, so Zach and I had plenty of time to play. We mostly go exploring, capturing small animals, and releasing them back into the wild. We had all 4 acres to ourselves, except for the area near the edge of the property. This was the start of the woods. Naturally, both our parents forbade us from going in there, but we did anyways. We cleared our own trails, pretending we were in a large jungle. One time, Zach swore he saw a copperhead, but we never found it. Hey guys, thank you. Hi G. Hi Cam. Thank you so much for the shares. Thank you. Oh my god, Debbie, thank you so much for the roses. Thank you all. Okay, just let me continue the story. Okay. At first, we'd stay relatively close to the edge. But as time went on, we became more relaxed. Before long, we were trekking deep into the woods, able to find our way back with the marker that we given ourselves. One day, at the edge of the property line, we came across a patch of woods that were somehow different, darker. It was thorn bushes. But this place was not also completely covered in all of them. In fact, it was so thick we couldn't hope to enter. We walked around it for what seemed like hours, but we never found a way past those thorns. As time passed, we forgot about the place in the woods after all. There was so much left to explore. To my delight, my parents told me we were going to be here for a while. Something to do with anomalies surrounding the forest. Zach and I ended up in the same classes, and before we knew it, we were fast approaching Halloween. The forest, which has once green and beautiful, so full of life, had transitioned into a graveyard of fallen leaves and claws reaching despairly into the sky. It was like they were begging the sky to return the leaves. Hi, thank you so much. On October 30th, Zach was staying over at my house for the night. It was just the two of us in the middle of nowhere. Our parents has gone to some boring adult dance party where kids weren't allowed. We were sitting on the floor, watching horror movies, when out of nowhere, Zach elbowed me in the side. Scowling, I asked him what the big deal was, and his face lit up. "Do you remember that thorny part of the forest?" he asked. "Hey Alia, thank you so much for the gift." Thank you. "Yeah," I replied. "Why?" Let's go in there. Everything's dried up. We can cut through those thorns now." I was hesitant at first. Something about that idea seemed off. I didn't want Zach to think I was a chicken. So reluctantly, I agreed. We grabbed our backpacks, stuffing them with supplies for our adventure. Zach placed a pair of garden shears and a spare flashlight in his, while I grabbed a map of the area, some batteries, and an extra flashlight. I'm sorry you need subtitles. I'll think about it for next time, okay? We then grabbed our jackets and pair of flashlights, and then we headed out towards the door. The moon was blood red, and it was full that night, bathing in everything that had the eerie vibe. It was almost as if the very earth itself was stained with blood. It had been a while since either of us has been in the woods. Because of school, we found our landmark with ease. I didn't know it at the time, but those landmarks would save my life. Before long, we were at the edge of the property line, staring at that part of the forest which we've never been able to enter before. "Look, they're gone," exclaimed Zack. Sure enough, the thorn bushes had vanished. It was almost as if the forest wanted us to enter. There was something foreboding about this part of the forest. While the surrounding trees stretched their branches outwards in all directions, the trees in front of us grew closely together, their branches reaching inwards into darkness. I felt a chill run down my spine, and suddenly I didn't want to go in anymore. Zack must have felt it too, because he shivered for a moment. We flipped on our lights and peered into the darkness. Upon closer inspection, the thorns were still present. They just were cleared to form a path into the woods. Zack now kneeled down, a puzzled look on his face. "I don't see any tracks, human or animal, going into the forest," Zack said. We concluded that something must have cleared that path some time ago. Whatever had, it looked like it was still around, or had been back in quite a long time. I didn't like it. The way the trees were so unnaturally bent made me feel as if the forest was waiting to swallow us whole. As ghastly as that sounded, that wasn't the most disturbing part. What was the most disturbing part was I felt compelled to go into the woods. Zack and I looked at one another before moving on. We walked in between the thick trees, our flashlights providing the only source of light in the otherwise pitch-black woods. The night was silent, spared for the sound of leaves that made as we walked on top of them. I couldn't help thinking they sounded like bones crunching beneath our feet. Occasionally, the trees would part, allowing for the moon's red hue to trickle down like blood. I was relieved when what was at last emerged into a forest, into a clearing. The trees opened up into a flat field that had been at least an acre, maybe more. The ground was barren, spare for a few trees here and there. In the middle was what appeared to be a lake. I had grabbed a mat earlier and pulled it out of my bag. I had our property drawn on it, and the woods circled. There were no bodies of water anywhere near our property. I handed the map to Zack, trying to shake the feeling that something felt very off. "We couldn't walk for more than 5 minutes," I said. I looked Zach looked as confused as I was. We tried to locate ourselves on the map, but aside from the lake, there was no other defining feature. At that moment, my gut was telling me to go back, to get the hell out of there. But then Zach started walking towards the lake, so I followed. He reached it before I did and let out a gasp. "Dude, come look at this," he said in almost a whisper. It's not right." Those words would haunt me for the rest of my life. It's almost as if my legs had a mind of their own, moving onto their own accord. Before long, I was standing next to Zach at the edge of the water. It didn't take me long to see what he meant. Our reflections weren't in the water, but everything else was, but only different. A few trees grew along the shoreline, but what was reflected back was, well, I don't know what to call it. The trees, instead of being barren, were covered in what looked like flesh. It was then that I noticed that we were the only things that were not reflected. The sky, the moon, was also absent. In its place was a seemingly endless void. "That's so weird," Zach mumbled. Zach's voice freed me from my trance. He walked along the bank until he found something he was looking for. A stick. "I don't think we should be here," I said to Zach, but he just ignored me. It was as if someone's making him pick up the stick. As Zach approached the surface, I saw the water move, as if there was something just beneath the surface. I tried to call out his name, but no sound came up from my mouth. I just stood there, frozen to the spot, as he knelt down, prodding the surface of the water with the stick. He did this a few times and stood up and looked at me. "It's just water," he said, taking a step back. And then he almost lost his balance and fell backwards into the water, a look of surprise on his face. I expected him to break the surface, or once splash has subsided, but he never did. At first, I thought he was fooling around, but then seconds turned to minutes, and I realized he wasn't pranking me. I ran towards the spot where he had fallen into the lake, and slowly, as I approached the edge, not wanting to touch the surface, I shone my light into the murky depths, scanning for any sign of my friend. As I was about to give up, I saw it. Zach's flashlight was on, except it was near the entrance of the forest that was reflected in the water. I looked back at where we had entered, seeing no flashlight. But when I returned my gaze to the lake, there it was. It never crossed my mind to run back and call the police. And even if I had, what would I tell them? That my friend was fell into a lake and transported to some alternate nightmarish reality? Yeah, right. Like they would even believe me. I wouldn't even have believed myself if I hadn't seen them with my own eyes. I began to shiver uncontrollably. It wasn't just that it was particularly cold that night. It was the thought of what I had to do. I pulled out my phone out of my pocket and pulled it and placed it on the ground a few feet from the bank before taking my bag out. I unzipped it and stuck my hand and pulled out the spare flashlight. I turned it on and laid it next to my phone, its beam pouring into the water. I didn't have signal here, but I could get one near the barn, and I wanted it ready because I had a very unsettling feeling. I slowly approached the water's edge, not knowing what to expect. I inhaled deeply and jumped in, feet first. What I felt next is hard to describe. It was cold, very cold, as if I had jumped into ice water, and I felt as if my insides were being torn inside out. It was like vertigo, but not quite the same. It was as if I had lost all my senses, including direction. When I had emerged from the lake, I took a huge breath of stale, dry air. I climbed out of the water and looked around. I was there, in a nightmare forest. Up ahead, I could see Zach's flashlight abandoned on the ground next to his backpack. I was about to call out his name until I saw them. The garden shears he brought lay broken in two on the ground, and each blade was coated in thick blood. I picked them up, not wanting to be out here defenselessly. The forest was unlike anything I had ever seen. The trees were covered in tendrils of flesh, wet and pulsing, as if alive. The world was dimly lit, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I looked up at the sky, but only saw darkness. No moon, no stars, just pitch black darkness. I felt as though if I were to jump, I would be consumed by that darkness, and rushing again the feeling of being swallowed rushed all over me. As I walked, the forest floor made a mix of squishing sound followed by a dull thud, as though there was a metal beneath the flesh. I followed the path into the woods, headed back towards my house. Here and there were pieces of Zach's clothing stuck to the trees. It looked as if he was running from something. I made it out into the thicker forest, back into familiar territory, if you can even call it that. All of our landmark was still there, albeit hard to make out due to the flash. I was almost at the edge when I heard a blood-curdling scream. It was Zach. I ran faster than I ever could, the foul air burning my lungs as I took short breaths. I slowed as I reached the clearing, unable to breathe. Parts of Zachary's pants lay in tatters on the ground, with a large amount of blood leading towards the barn. The barn was a stark contrast to the forest. It was comprised not of wood, but of rusted metal. And though the tendrils climbed out the perimeter, they didn't extend than maybe 3 feet. I approached the doors cautiously, holding a blade in each hand, and I pushed them open. What I saw next, I'd never forget. Zach's body was hung on a meat hook, its jagged edge protruding through his right upper chest. His shirt was soaked in blood, which traveled down his legs. His pants were shredded, and where his feet used to be were mangled in lumps of meat, with bits of bone sticking out at some angles. It looked like something has chewed off his legs, and I shuddered at the thought of what did this to him. Beneath him was a steadily growing puddle of blood. I would have thought him dead had he not looked up at me. Slowly he reached his left hand into his pocket and pulled out his phone, holding it out to me. As his arm stretched, he mouthed the words, "Get out." Though all that came out of his mouth was a gargling sound followed by blood. I put the blades down and took it, and then watched as my friend took his last breath. Hey, Wonderpad is actually horror. Okay. I looked at his phone and saw he had taken a picture of what attacked him. It was human-like, but distorted. Its legs and arms were long and lanky, skin stretched thin over bone. It had a small tail, like what you see on a tadpole. Its feet and hands both ended in 4 digits. Each complete with long and sharp claws. Its spine protruded from its back and looked as if it would tear right through any moment. It had a neck twice as long as a normal human, with a round head at the end. It was facing downward in the picture, so I couldn't see what its face looked like. I looked up and noticed Zach wasn't the only one hanging up in the barn. There were several bodies, each in varying stages of decomposition, hanging from hooks. Some were bones picked clean of flesh, while others thought they had been hanging there for months. At that point, I doubled over and threw up. And when I raised my head, I saw it. I saw the creature. Its face, something straight out of a nightmare. Where its face should have been was a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, sunken into the head. It kind of reminded me how a giant maw of the Kraken as it devoured one of Odyssey's ships. On either side were 2 small beady black eyes as dark as the night sky. As it launched at me, I fell backwards, my thumb hitting the camera button, A bright light flashed from the phone, and the creature stumbled backwards, emitting a horrible screeching sound that sounded like a dozen birds going through a meat grinder. I got to my feet and I ran, bolting from the barn of the woods. The creature still screeching badly. I heard I heard a multiple screeches echo from within the woods as I ran. Just how many of those things were out there? I didn't want to know. My body moved on autopilot, following the markers that Zach and I had placed so many times before. At one point, I saw one running at me on all fours from my right side. Instinctively, I took its picture, glad to see it stumble and fall. I ran into the thicket of trees that lead to the lake, sprinting as quickly as I could without falling over. As I made into the clearing, I fell and I felt a searing pain shoot down my left leg into my foot. One of the creatures has dug its claws into me and was dragging me back into the woods. Zach's phone had fallen a few feet from me, and I couldn't reach it. To my right was his bag, with a spare flashlight sticking out from the top. I grabbed it. I never prayed so hard in my life like I did in this night at the woods. Please, God, let it work. Please, God, let it work. I muttered as I pointed it towards the creature and flipped the switch on. Immediately, a beam of light shone from the flashlight directly into the creature's face. It released me, retreating back into the darkness, howling in pain. I half ran, half limped to the water, all the while screeching of the creatures grew in volumes behind me. Reflected in was my world, trees without flesh, sky alight with stars, and a forest devoid of those things. I didn't hesitate. I jumped into the water, not caring about the return of that vertigo feeling. I emerged from the surface and took a breath of air that didn't taste like death. I pulled myself onto the shore and collapsed, panting. I lay there, listening for those creatures to break into the surface, but they never did. I turned off the flashlight by my phone, put them in my bag, and began limping into the forest. As I made my way through the dark thicket, I heard the screeching of one of those creatures. I turned around, fumbling with the flashlight, and dropped it, causing the bulb to shatter. I turned and ran, and not noticing the pain in my leg, and not stopping until I had reached the barn. With adrenaline fading, I collapsed beneath the light above the doors. For a second, I could have sworn I saw one of those things lurking in the woods. I wasted no time. I pulled out my phone and called the police, telling them that my friend had been killed. I don't know how long I sat there. It felt like an eternity. I was beyond happy to hear the sirens as they approached. I don't remember much of that night. I know my parents were there, pale as ghosts, when they saw my leg as I sat in the ambulance. I saw Zach's parents as well. His mother was on his knees, face buried in her hands, crying. Yo, hi Jean. His father just stood there, one arm on his crying wife, his face devoid of any emotion. At that point, it all became a blur. I awoke in the morning in the hospital, my parents asleep in the bed next to mine. Apparently, I had lost a lot of blood from my wound and had passed out. I remember feeling uneasy at the thought of having someone else's blood inside of me. The police questioned me and I told them everything. I told them about the forest, about the lake, the nightmarish worlds, and the creatures. I even told them how to find it. They didn't believe me, of course. And I had left Zach's phone back by the lake. They surmised that Zach and I were attacked by an animal, and after seeing it maul my friend to death, my mind, influenced by Halloween movies, created that world to cope with the trauma. Nonetheless, the police formed a search party and went into the woods, searching for what remained of Zach's body. They never did find it, nor did they find that patch of woods that lead to the lake. It was as if that part of the forest simply disappeared. I had to take physical therapy as well to talk to a shrink regularly. My leg recovered, but I never stopped having nightmares from that again. Hi for you. Even though it has been years since it happened. My parents didn't stay in that town long, and after that, I was glad. I hated the looks the other kids would give me, and how they would keep asking me what really happened out there in the woods. Now, whenever my parents have work, they make sure to rent a house in town, far from any nearby woods. Sometimes, late at night, I can hear the creature in the distant woods, screeching in a mix of anger and hunger. Hunger for me. Okay, that is the end of the story. It's called The Lake in the Woods. This is by Sean Badolin. Ooh, I know, right? Who would believe weird creatures? You almost fell asleep? Oh, that's good, at least. Okay, how is everyone feeling? Thanks so much, Tabby, for the gift. They met Bunyan. That's a good one. I don't know, how's everyone doing? Do you want another one? Shall we continue? Yes. Okay. Let me find one that isn't so long. A lot of them are actually quite long. About 40 minutes or so. So I don't want to drag a bit too long, so... Oh, you're here too. Hi, Liao. Yeah. Okay, I have another one. At least it's not a dream. Okay. Have I read about Coraline? The creepypasta, right? Is it? Okay. I found another one. Arachnophilia. This is written by J.B. Oranda. So I'm gonna start now. It's going to be about 15 minutes. So let's... Without further ado, let's go. I live in a small rural town that was nestled. So 1 second. Let me drink water. That was away from the hustle and bustle of city life, in an area not too far from Virginia. It's the kind of town that would take about 20 minutes to drive from one end to another. There's this main road that cuts down to the center of town. Then everything is situated alongside or branching off from it. My house sat on a hill just in front of the thick patch of trees which separated my house from the next street. The next street over in the particular direction was a little over half a mile, but as a kid it felt big as the Amazon. I loved playing in the woods, and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot as I ran from the imaginary monsters towards a castle in the trees. Those were good, simpler times. I'm an only child, so I never really made any friends in school. Quite the opposite, actually. I was bullied the entire time I was in school, until it happened. For the meantime, however, I found my solace using my imagination to take me to grand adventures under the shady canopy. One of the things that always interested me was that different spiders could be found living within these woods, all of various shapes and sizes, some harmless and others pretty lethal. They would adorn the trees like egg-legged ornaments. I would imagine I was a secret agent on a dangerous mission, dodging the almost invisible webs as if they were laser beams that could cut off my arm like butter. I've never been afraid of spiders, but I've always felt pity for them. As soon as any person sees any spider, their immediate reaction is to kill it. And that's a terrible way to live for any creature and human alike. Because of this, if I were ever to spot a spider inside my house that was potentially dangerous, I would try to gently pick it up and take it to safety. I'd use a piece of cardboard or a stick and usher the little guy on, and then carry them outside onto the grass and let them walk off. If I found one that I thought was especially interesting, like one with bright colors or abnormally long legs, I'd take it to the biggest tree in the woods and place it on a branch. Now, it might sound silly to you, but I would also talk to them. They wouldn't talk back, obviously. I didn't think I was having a real conversation with them or anything like that. I'd speak to them like you speak to any pet. I would always say hello whenever I saw them, and I'd apologize if I disturbed them one of their meticulously crafted webs. I saw the spiders, and all creatures really, I see them as equal to people. After all, we are all on Earth trying to survive. My father, however, did not share my optimistic disposition. He was, let's just say, never going to win Father of the Year award. Thank you so much for the GG. My mother, God rest her soul, died giving birth to me, and I always felt he blamed me for it. From the stories my neighbors and aunt have told me, she's the sweetest person they've ever met, and way too good for someone like my father. Shortly after my mom's passing, my Aunt Rose stayed with us for the first 5 years of my life, and those were as good as they could be for people in our situation. But that all changed one day when I came home from school just to find my aunt sitting on our porch alongside all her things. When I asked her what was going on, she simply stated that she had to leave and couldn't live with us anymore. It was only on one of my father's late night benders that I found out she had tried to make a move on the old man, only for him to violently react with a slap to her face and a boot out the door. That day was the true start of his and, consequently, my downfall. He drank like a fish just about every night that I can remember, and I actively avoided him every chance I could. Some afternoons I'd come in to see him lazily slump in his recliner, still clutching his precious and empty bottle. There was one night in particular he would drink much more than his usual amount. A day I had grown to despise and never looked back. My birthday. On that day when I got off the school bus, and headed to my long and curving driveway and into the woods as usual, I would make it a point to stay out later than normal to avoid dealing with my dad. Most of the time, even though it broke my dad's back, before dark rule, I would walk into our little trailer just to find his bedroom door shut with his obnoxious snores inside. On my 11th birthday, however, it seemed my luck had finally run out. I had just walked in a little late from another escapade from the woods. As soon as I walked in, I could smell the liquor from the air of the small trailer. "Where have you been, boy?" my father asked. My father asked in a gruff tone before bringing the bottle of whiskey to his lips. I stammered a bit, but finally said I was out playing with some friends. "You think you're funny, boy? Look at you. I know you ain't got no friends. You know my rules, boy. I told you to be in this house before dark. Yet you are coming in here without a care in the world, and lies falling out your mouth like nothing." He took another swig at the dark liquid and looked at me in the eye. My heart started to race and my face grew hot. "You know what? You know what to do. Go pick a switch." Now, for anyone who doesn't know, when your parents tell you to go pick the switch, they mean to go outside and find a flexible, skinny stick so I can beat you with it. Or I'll pick myself one. And trust me, you did not want them to get one. So begrudgingly, I went out and did as I was told. When I came back inside, my father was standing up, bottle still in his hand, and with a stone-cold look of hate in his face. Hot tears began to form around my eyes as I said, I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to. He snatched the stick from my hand and yelled, Are you about to give me lip, boy? Today of all days? I don't take back talk from arrogant little shits like you. He sat the bottle down and cocked his arms back, starting to whip me relentlessly and aiming for any bit of bare skin he could see. After 8 or 9 swings, the stick started breaking into strands with little impact, leaving hard stinging pain all over my body. Through my ensuing wails, I heard him chuckle. Oh, now you've done it, boy. You thought you could easily bring me this hunk of shit and get away easy, huh? He dropped the broken piece of wood in his hand and grabbed the bottle off the countertop, taking a long drink. After he set it back down, his hands went to his belt, undoing the latch. You better make a decision, boy. My heart stopped, suspended in an eternity of seconds. It took him to remove the belt while fear bubbled inside me. Do you want bruises on the back or front? Hurry up now, or I'm gonna start swinging wherever I want. He grunted as he gathered the belt in his hand. I began crying uncontrollably at this point, and therefore wasn't able to answer right away, which only made him angrier. I wiped the stinging tears away from my eyes and saw him glaring at me. Time's up, he said as he raised his hand up, preparing to unload his fury on me with the belt. I shut my eyes and tensed my body, ready for the imminent impact, my heart feeling as if it wanted to beat out of my chest. It's not true what they say, you know, about life flashing before your eyes when you think you're gonna die. In that moment, all I could hear was blackness. The world would fall away, and my only thoughts were that I would die. Ah, what the My father called out as he heard a loud smack of hand against skin. I opened my eyes to see the old man standing with his hand on the back of his neck. He pulled it away to reveal the squished remains of a spider in his palm. Stupid fucking bugs, he shouted as he wiped his hands on his pants. I looked up at him, and a sudden wild idea crossed my mind, filling my face with heat. When I saw him reach over for the bottle, I acted without further hesitation. I bolted past him and ran for the door, not bothering to look back at the man I called my father. I heard his angry grunts as he downed the remaining alcohol just as I opened the door and turned the knob. The door flew open, and I shot out like a bullet, heading into the woods. My heart beat like a drum, and my vision was blurry from the tears. But I knew if my dad caught me, he would probably have killed me. I heard him shouting from the house, but I didn't look back. I pushed on. My mind was still back in the house, but my feet was on autopilot, carrying me to the safety of the trees. I had run through these woods so many times before. I could probably run and not hit a single tree. I reached the big one and stopped, my lungs burning with relentless intensity. Yeah, actually, Tabby, I'm a little tired, but this will be the last story, I promise. Intense. I sat down and propped myself against the tree, panting heavily and sweating. I tried to steady my breathing while still listening out for my father. But in my panic, I thought I must have lost him. I turned slowly and stuck my head around the edge of the trunk, just as the size 12 steel toe boot was launched into my face, the force knocking me backwards. I screamed in agony as pain exploded through my head, blood already beginning to pour from my freshly broken nose. "You're going to regret running, boy. You took my wife from me, the light of my life. You sucked all the life out of her like the mosquito you are, and you took my angel from me. My life has been hell ever since, and all you ever do is to disobey me and make excuses. So since you love this damn woods so much, I might as well bury you here and fix all of my problems." My father snarled at me. I shut my eyes and tensed my body, preparing for the inevitable strike that would end my life. But it never came. Instead, I heard the loud thud of something massive hitting the ground. I opened my eyes when I heard the blood-curdling scream of my father, to see an ungodly sight. There, standing impossibly in front of me, was an enormous spider with legs as thick as telephone poles and mandibles as long as my arm. It lunged at my father and bit down on his shoulder, leaving 2 holes when it pulled away. The wounds instantly darkened, and my father's blood began to bubble around the edges. His body stiffened and he screamed again, falling over to the ground. I sat paralyzed with fear, my heart like it would explode any second. My father's body, however, was paralyzed by other means, for he remained stiff while continuing to scream and plead for help. The monster then turned its eyes to me, blinking a few of them. "Do not be afraid, young one," a voice spoke in my mind. The spider's huge mandibles produced a chittering and clicking sounds as the words entered my head, and I knew it was speaking to me. "We do not mean you any harm, little one. He, however, will not be so lucky." The beast clicked, rolling my father's underneath its massive body as it began to cocoon my wailing dad. It spoke again. "Do you remember me, little one? It has been many nights since then. I was the first you brought here to this tree. For countless decades, your kind has been hostile to us, ending our lives beneath the heels or swatting us with newspaper. It is why we birth so many young, for most will never get the chance to live a full life. You, however, are different." It then finished the cocoon and words echoed in my brain. "Ever since you brought me here, I had grown and watched you. Since then, you have continued to show kindness to many of us. These woods are filled with those that has benefited from your selfless action. Hey K-san, thank you so much for the rose. My father then made a gurgling noise as he tried to choke out my name. It seemed the toxin was spreading all over, for when I looked into his eyes, they were a dark shade of purple, no irises to speak of. Thank you so much for the like and a rose. Where was I? He tried to talk, but it sounded like his throat was closing up because he produced a wheezing sound. I looked back at the spider and asked, "Is he going to die?" The monster chittered its response. "Not for another few hours, no. He will stay paralyzed until it's over." K-san, thank you so much for the roses. Thank you. Thank you, Taya, for the like. Where was I? He will feel everything until the end. Does this upset you? I paused for a moment and then shook my head and asked another question. So wait, the spider that bit him in my house, is that how you watched me? And another few gurgling and the coughing sounds came from my father before the spider replied, clicking its wet mandibles together. Of course, as I said, these woods are filled with those who owe you their lives. He was to alert us if things ever go too bad. But he chose to give his life to help you on his own accord. Before he died, he released a pheromone which alerted us to danger. And that is how I knew something was wrong. Hey guys, thank you so much for the roses. Thank you. Many more of my kind would gladly do the same. It is because of you that most of us are here. A feeling of pride welled up inside me, and for once a long time I felt loved. My good feelings were gone in an instant. Once again, my father choked on words which would not form. I walked over and crouched down so my face was close to his, studying all the dark veins under his skin. What was that? Was all I said. After about a minute, he finally said, "I'm sorry, son." Yeah, this part, I think this story is not that creepy. It's not creepy enough. Okay. Are you able to give me a lip, boy? You know the rules. Pick a switch. Better hurry up. Oh, he basically, he said, "I'm sorry, son. Please help me." I looked into his dark, sick eyes and stood up and said, "Are you about to give me lip, boy? You know the rules. Pick a switch. Better hurry up. I'll decide for you." His eyes grew wide as a moment of clarifying silence hung up in the air. Slowly, I backed away. I backed away from him and looked over the monstrous spider that gave him a nod of confirmation. The beast shrieked in delight, while a dozen spiders descended down from branches and slowly covering my still choking father, beginning to wrap around his coffin made of web. Within minutes, he was completely secured in webbing, and I stood there, patiently waiting until his muffled groans fell silent. A vicious smile crept its way across my face as I watched the 100 strands descend upon him, lifting him slowly into the trees as if he was being raptured. A sudden relief washed over me, and my eyes began to water while I looked upon the denizens of the trees. "Thank you. thank you all. I said to my unlikely saviors, these supposed pests abhorred by society, and I turned away to head back up to my now empty house. The chittering and scurrying of millions of tiny legs following me brought almost an alien emotion back into my life. Joy. I didn't write this as some sort of confession or some form of atonement. This is a testament to the tenacity of life, the will to survive. My father was a real piece of shit, and even now, after 3 long years without him, I do not regret what happened. In fact, I revel in knowing he isn't around to spread his hateful nature anymore, because with his life taken, mine can finally start. Shortly after I began going to school again, because even I knew that if I ever went missing, cops will be involved. So I kept my head low for most of the part. But never again did I allow myself to be bullied. It's funny how one small little creature can make someone sick for days, or leave burning welts all over the skin, or kill you. Thank you so much for the ghost. Thank you, Daya. Word spread quickly amongst the delinquents about the weird shit that seemed to be happening to anyone that fucked with me, and eventually they left me alone. Everyone left me alone. My only friends now are the 8-legged inhabitants of the woods, and I very much prefer it that way. Let this be as a warning for those of you who treat others as lesser life forms than yourself. All life has value, no matter how small. Okay, so that was the story of Arachnophilia by J.D. Orander. Okay, this was a lot less horrifying than I thought. This one was a bit more chill, I think. Yep, it's definitely more chill. But, well, that is all the time I have for you today. Oh my god, for those of you who are watching, guys, it's 1 AM. Why are you still up? Go to sleep. Go to sleep, guys. Why are you still up? Oh my god, Seal, thank you so much for the gifts. Yes, guys, the end. Okay. Hey, Fira, thank you so much for the follow. Okay, so that was 4 horror stories. If you guys are interested, I'll try to cover more horror stories on other days of streams. Lucille, thank you again so much for the... Yes, I am a little tired. I actually haven't slept for more than a day. So it's been about 36 hours since I slept. So I'll definitely pass out after this stream. So, do you guys have any feedback or thoughts on the stories or the stream? Do let me know. I can definitely try to improve to basically do it better for you guys. Yeah. Man. I think I've run out of voice today. I don't think that's much more voice for me to talk. Bro, don't sleep yet. You know I'm scared. I don't think that's much. There was only the last story is only just the spiders. I don't think you need to be scared of spiders. But Lucille, thank you so much for joining. Yeah, Fira, unfortunately I'm ending now. There were about 4 stories just now. But I'll definitely put horror stories as one of the main things. So stay tuned for that. Lucille, thank you again so much for accompanying me, and Hannah, every single time. Thank you so much for your support. And well, I feel like I'm reading this and making you guys sleepy rather than scared. I don't think the last story was very scary. I think it was quite mellow. And Leogia Noises, thank you so much for coming and hearing my pretty cringe stories. Right? You fell asleep on your desk. Oh no. Don't be like that. Okay. So this will be it for me today. And I want to tell all of you to go to bed. It's freaking 1:25 a.m. Why are you guys still not asleep? Well, I personally think it's a bit of cringe, but if you think it's not, then I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, it's 1:25. It's 1:25 a.m. Why are you not asleep? It's 1:25. Okay, guys. Okay, right. So, with that being said, I'll give my goodbyes here. Have a good night, everyone. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for coming to my streams. And I wish all of you to have sweet dreams and have a good day tomorrow. For those of you who are celebrating, happy Deepavali. If not, have a good weekend. I'll see you guys here. Have a good night. Bye bye. And see you on the next stream. Thank you. Thank you again, all of you.